up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon. While the leaders of the two Koreas muse about improved inter-Korean ties, the South Korean government and North Korea experts warn the North's seemingly conciliatory gestures may have a darker intent. Reflecting economic uncertainties in China, global markets tumble on the first trading day of the new year. Stocks on Wall Street plunge on the first day of a new year for the first time since 2008. Plus, clashes between the Shia-led Iraqi government and Sunni militants have intensified in recent days after security forces cracked down on a rebel protest camp. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. We are entering the new year, and with it, we are seeing efforts by the leaderships of both Koreas to improve their strained relations.
The softer and friendlier tone between the two sides has raised hopes for dialogue, but South Korean ministers and North Korea experts have warned against feeling too optimistic just yet. Han Da-eun has more.
North Korea's agency in charge of inter-Korean relations has pledged to open up a new phase towards the reunification of the two Koreas in 2014. In an interview posted on the North's propaganda website 우리 민족끼리 on Thursday, officials from the Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of the Fatherland called for pragmatic efforts to improve inter-Korean ties. This comes a day after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un sent a conciliatory message to the South through his New Year's address. On the same day, President Park Geun-hye said she'll make greater efforts in 2014 to realize peace on the Korean peninsula during a phone conversation with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Against such a backdrop, hopes are rising the two Koreas may relaunch stalled talks soon. Some say Pyongyang will likely propose talks on family reunions for those separated since the Korean War sometime around the Lunar New Year at the end of January. But many experts are warning against being too optimistic. They say Pyongyang's friendly messages are likely part of a carefully calculated move to make leeway for further provocations if needed, as well as to calm any internal instability. Seoul's foreign and defense ministers are also refusing to read too much into the statements. Unification Minister Yoo Gil-jae, during a New Year's press hearing on Thursday, said Kim Jong-un's New Year's message does not point to any specific proposal for dialogue. Defense Minister Kim Kwan-jin also called on the South Korean military to stay vigilant, as Pyongyang may be using a two-track approach of dialogue and provocation. South Korean government officials, however, say that they have not completely ruled out the possibility of inter-Korean dialogue sometime in the near future. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
The United States says the main focus of its North Korea policy in the new year will continue to be the denuclearization of the North Korean regime. At a press briefing Thursday, U.S. State Department spokesperson Marie Harf said Washington will continue to make decisions based upon Pyongyang's actions and not its words. Harf declined to analyze North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's New Year's message, but did say the U.S. is constantly consulting with China on the issue. As for Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's recent visit to the Yasukuni Shrine honoring war criminals, Harf said Washington has been urging Tokyo to solve historical issues with its neighbors in an amicable manner. South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se is scheduled to meet with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in Washington next week to discuss the diplomatic situation in Northeast Asia. A media outlet in China is claiming that Japan's nuclear weapons capability is equivalent to that of the U.S. The media outlet for the People's Liberation Army released a report Wednesday saying that Japan's 6 nuclear fuel reprocessing facilities can produce 9 tons of plutonium per year, which can be used to produce 2,000 nuclear weapons. The Daily went on to say that Japan could already have produced or may possibly be producing 2 to 5 nuclear devices, which is more than North Korea or Iran. The newspaper also called for an extensive investigation into the matter.
The Korean government plans to front-load 65% of its annual budget in the first half of the year to ensure the economic recovery stays firmly on track over the next few months. The decision was approved Friday during a cabinet meeting led by Prime Minister Jonguns. Under the plan, the government will set aside 40% of its fiscal spending for this year in the first quarter and 25% in the April to June period. Officials say funds will be funneled into projects which are easy to carry out and benefit regular people, like measures to boost jobs. Now, a number of sweeping changes to Korea's financial sector are in the pipeline for this year as the nation aims to provide consumers with a friendlier, safer environment to carry out their day-to-day banking. Yulian reports.
These are the fake 10 billion won checks that were cashed in the middle of last year. A jaw-dropping incident that proved that forgery on a large scale is still possible to this day. 10 billion won translates to roughly 10 million US dollars. To prevent further counterfeit checks, financial authorities have decided to adopt new security-enhanced designs.
We have made the letters that read cashier's check change color. Depending on which angle it's looked at, the letters will be either purple or green.
At the beginning of next month, ATM machines will no longer accept magnetic stripe cards. People will have to use what's called integrated circuit cards, or IC cards, to prevent people from using magnetic stripe cards that were duplicated from the original. As for cash advances, the terminology will change. Cash advance services using credit cards will now be called short-term card loans. This is to make it clear to consumers that the service is a type of a loan and not a cash withdrawal service. Now, 2014 also proves to be a better year for those that own domestic automobiles. Auto insurance for domestic cars will be slashed by an average of 2.9%, while those that own imported cars will pay more by an average of 11.3%. Finally, financial authorities have strengthened the penalty for accounting fraud. Presidents of companies or executive-level personnel found guilty now face up to 7 years in prison and $65,000 US in fines. Yurian, Arirang News.
3 of Korea's nuclear reactors will soon resume operations, tempering fears of a nationwide power shortage this winter. The Nuclear Safety and Security Commission approved the resumption of the Shingori reactors 1 and 2 and the Shin-Wolsong reactor number 1. The 3 have been sitting idle since May after safety certificates for control cables were found to have been faked. Now, with newly replaced cables in place and after regular checkups, the 3 reactors are expected to be fully operational by the end of next week.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
Dozens were killed in a string of attacks in Iraq Thursday, and yet another sign extremist groups linked to al-Qaeda are making a resurgence in the country. The United Nations also says that violence in Iraq in 2013 soared to levels not seen in years. Our Kim Min-ji has the details.
A suicide bomber driving a car full of explosives killed at least 12 people and wounded 25 others in Iraq Thursday. The bomb went off outside a car showroom northeast of Baghdad. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Violence has intensified since April after the Shia-led government carried out a deadly crackdown on a Sunni protest camp. Tensions were further fueled during the past week following the arrest of a senior Sunni politician by authorities and after police dismantled a Sunni protest camp, killing at least 13. On Thursday, al-Qaeda militants took control of almost half of the cities of Ramadi and Fallujah in Anbar province, where heavy fighting has been raging since Monday. In a separate attack on the same day, a truck bombing claimed the lives of at least 19 people in a city north of Baghdad, as security forces and allied tribesmen clashed to put down an uprising by al-Qaeda-linked militants. In another attack that day, a minibus exploded, killing 4 and wounding 6 in Baghdad's Shab district. And earlier in the day, a roadside bomb exploded inside a street market, taking the lives of 4 people and injuring 11 others south of Baghdad. Earlier this week, the United Nations said over 7,800 Iraqi civilians were killed in violent attacks in 2013, the highest annual death toll in years. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
At least 5 people have been killed after a suspected car bomb exploded in a southern suburb of the Lebanese capital, Beirut. The Lebanese health minister confirmed that 5 people died and at least 66 were injured in Thursday's attack on a largely Hezbollah-held district. Beirut has been hit by a wave of bomb attacks in recent months, including one last week, which killed former finance minister, a political adversary of Hezbollah and its ally, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. In November, more than 20 people were killed by suicide bombers at the Iranian embassy in southern Beirut, and explosions have also rocked other nearby Hezbollah districts and Sunni mosques in the northern city of Tripoli. Conflict in Syria has polarized Lebanon and ratcheted up sectarian tensions in the country. South Sudan's army is making ground on 2 rebel-controlled towns as the 2 warring sides gather in Ethiopia for peace talks to end 3 weeks of violence, which has killed more than 1,000 people and displaced nearly 200,000. South Sudanese President Salva Kiir has declared a state of emergency in 2 states whose respective provincial capitals are in the hands of militia loyal to former Vice President Riek Machar. Rebel negotiators are already in Addis Ababa, but only half of the government's delegation is present. The remainder are due in the city any time now. There's growing international pressure on both sides to strike a peace deal as soon as possible. The White House says those found guilty of atrocities and war crimes will be held accountable.
Now, the substance of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's New Year's address caught many off guard with its rather conciliatory tone towards the South. His confident style in which the young leader delivered the speech has also been noted by experts. Connie Kim has the details.
This is a footage of Kim Jong-un making his New Year's address. The way he moves is no different from last year, but his facial expressions have softened up much more.
우리는 주체형의 성스러운 진군길에 뚜렷한 자국을 아로새긴 일과 인민들은 우리 당을 끝없이 신뢰하고 따르면서.
A sound expert has also analyzed his tone of voice. The expert says his voice has a higher tone now and his pronunciation has become clearer. In addition, Kim's sound variation, which usually reflects tolerance level, has expanded notably. This suggests Kim has grown more confident over the past 12 months.
Listening to Kim's 2014 New Year's address, the voice factor shows tolerance has increased by up to 50% from last year. Also, noting that a person's voice becomes very clear when confident, Kim's confidence level has jumped by up to 60%.
The change in Kim Jong-un's voice tone is noteworthy. From following a middle-aged man's low voice tone, Kim has found his own tone that better suits his young age. The similarity between Kim Jong-un and his grandfather Kim Il-sung's voice has decreased from 92% to 80% in the space of a year. Experts believe Kim Jong-un used to mimic his grandfather's voice to evoke nostalgia for the Kim Il-sung era. However, it wasn't just Kim Jong-un's facial expressions and voice tone that changed over the past year. There is speculation his health may have worsened as Kim took deep breaths every 4 seconds during his New Year's address. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, dozens of scientists and tourists who spent over a week aboard a vessel trapped in Antarctic ice have been rescued following an international effort that had been thwarted multiple times due to the region's extremely unforgiving climate. 52 people who were left stranded in Antarctica over Christmas and the New Year was safely rescued by a helicopter from a Chinese icebreaker. The group were then taken to an Australian supply ship. The Russian research vessel got trapped in a thick ice floe on Christmas Eve when it was on its way towards Antarctica. The 22-member crew is staying aboard as the ship is not in imminent danger, but it remains immobile. Customers have swarmed the U.S. state of Colorado, which opened up for business as the first U.S. state to sell marijuana for recreational purposes. But if you're a Korean national, you may want to stay away because the Korean Association Against Drug Abuse says you can be charged with criminal offences upon returning to your home country. In Korea, it is illegal to smoke marijuana, and users can face up to 30 years behind bars for the offence, even if it's legal to use the drug in the place which it was used. Some studies have shown that marijuana is addictive and pose health risks when used repeatedly for a long period of time. Now, in sports, 22-year-old Ji So-yeon has become the first Korean female footballer to join England's Women's Super League as a member of Chelsea Ladies. Son Ji-son reports.
Footballer Ji So-yeon is kicking off the year with a dream come true. Her agent Insport Korea announced Friday that the national team's unparalleled midfielder had agreed on a 2-year contract with Chelsea Ladies in England's Women's Super League. Although her salary has not been made public, the speculation is that she will be paid at the highest level in Chelsea Ladies' history. Chelsea has also offered housing, airfare to and from Korea, and English language classes. Known as the female Park Ji-sung after Korea's first Premier League player, the 22-year-old has scored 26 goals in 55 international matches and helped her team Aina Kobe Leonessa win back-to-back titles during her 3 years in Japan's L1 League.
Korean players are significantly underrated in the European field. I want to break that trend, and I know I can do it to pave the way for younger players.
Chelsea has been interested in recruiting Ji since last year, when Aina Kobe beat the London club in the finals of the International Women's Cup in December, when she also picked up her 3rd consecutive MVP award. Ji is set to depart for the UK in the coming days for a physical, the last step before she seals the deal. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
Now, hospitals in Korea are reporting a surging number of flu patients, with health authorities issuing a nationwide influenza warning. Doctors say the best means of defense is still a flu shot, but even that might not stop you falling foul of the virus. Paulie reports.
Here in Seoul, a local medical clinic has been experiencing a sharp spike in patients suffering from high fevers, chills, and other flu-like symptoms. Freezing temperatures over the past few weeks have exacerbated conditions for potential influenza infections, with young children and senior citizens at the highest risk of complications.
Due to my severe condition, I collapsed. I couldn't even get up in the middle of the night.
Korea is expected to boast the highest rate of flu vaccinations in recent years, with about 15 million people getting vaccinated this winter. Even though annual flu shots remain the most effective way to reduce your chances of infection, they don't guarantee protection from every viral strain. Doctors say it's also important to recognize flu symptoms from that of a common cold, as the virus can leave your body vulnerable to secondary infections such as pneumonia.
In the case of a persistent fever and worsening symptoms, you may in fact be suffering from influenza. Since there is a chance of catching secondary pneumonia, it's best to first go to a hospital and get diagnosed.
In addition to vaccines, strict personal hygiene is your next best bet in preventing the spread of the influenza virus. Wearing masks when going outside is recommended, as well as frequently and thoroughly washing your hands with soap. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
And time now to get an update on the weather with our Jian at the Weather Center standing by. Hello there, Jian.
Good afternoon, Mark and Yusun. Well, are you guys looking for something to do out of town this weekend?
Sure, I'm always happy to get out of town on the weekend. What about you, Son?
Me too. And I have a feeling that you have some sort of a tip for us.
Yeah.
Of course I do. Well, today I'd like to tell you about the festival that's been named by Lonely Planet and CNN as one of the 7 wonders of winter. It's the Hwacheon Sancheoneo Ice Festival. Well, the festival is full of performances and activities such as ice sledding, snow sledding, ice soccer, and of course, ice fishing for Sancheoneo, which is a kind of trout. Well, the festival kicks off tomorrow in Hwacheon, Gangwon-do, which is in the northeast of Seoul, and the weather should cooperate for festival goers this weekend. Well, it's been unseasonably mild, and that should continue today and into the weekend. And for today, the afternoon highs will be about 5 degrees higher than seasonal norms. But if you're in the central region and Jeollado in particular, be aware that there's a high level of fine dust particles in the air. So be sure to wear a face mask before heading out today. And the northern parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do might see a mix of rain and snow late in the afternoon. And the weather outlook will remain mild for much of the country through the weekend. So let's get out and enjoy it before the 1st January cold snap returns later next week. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The high in Seoul will peak at 8, while Daegu and Gwangju get up to 11 and 12 respectively, and Busan will enjoy a high of 13. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will see a high of 14 in the afternoon, Daejeon and Dokdo will get up to 9, and Mount Kumgang will only climb to -2. That's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me this week. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and back to Mark and Yusun in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jian, for the weather there. And that does it for this Friday edition of Newsline at Noon.
Mark and I will be back next Monday right here on Newsline at Noon.